Hi folks, apologies for the shaky camera. We're on a bit of a road trip today, heading down for a special behind the scenes tour. So stick around and we'll see how we get on. So Yandles is about 45 minutes away from us. We're just heading across the Somerset levels now, and it is where we get all of the oak for the timber framing projects, and also things like exotic hardwoods and things like that for smaller projects. Plus it's got an awesome tool shop. But what we're actually going for today is a VIP behind the scenes tour, which we've been invited on to have a look round, especially around the sawmill. So I'll take the camera, hopefully give you a bit of an inside scoop whilst I'm there. Plus we might even come away with a couple of toys from the tool shop, although I am under very strict orders not to come away with any large power tools. But anyway, hope you enjoy this one. So the tour started outside, and David took us through the process, taking us from essentially round timber like you see outside through the sawmill to the point where it's ready to hit the shelves in the timber store.
We buy a lot of our round timber now from France. The reason being that France actually has a lot more trees than the UK. They're much better managed than the UK, because I think the problem in any tree has a lifespan, and the problem was in the UK we always put preservation orders on things, and realistically the trees begin to go past their best, they begin to die, and that's part of the reason why we lost so many trees in the gales, because it was trees that should have been felled years ago and then replanted. But in this country we like to stick preservation orders on everything, when in all fairness it would have been better to have actually felled the trees and then replanted at a later time. Anything that size is fine, but if you get over more this size, or especially this size, it doesn't really do much when you leave it like this for years. People think it's going to dry out, but it doesn't really dry out. It will rot before it dries out. Elm trees and ash trees probably have a lifespan of about 2 to 3 years before they begin to go almost like yellow and pithy, and the actual timber itself will go yellow. And that was the trouble with the Dutch elm disease, because it was millions of trees affected with the Dutch elm disease, and the actual disease, it was a beetle which attacked the actual bark of the tree. So it didn't affect the timber at all. It just affected the bark. But the problem was the sheer volume of trees dying. People couldn't cut the trees fast enough, so they were rotting rather than dying.
So this is where the real fun stuff begins. Outside in the yard you'll see all the green oak ready to ship out to different projects, and this is the same type of beams that we've been purchasing. So as we head over to the main sawmill, you can see this huge cyclone outside, which is just a supersized version of what we run in the workshop here, and the heavy stuff falls straight down through that and separates out, and I guess that's used for by local farmers, I think, for bedding and things like that. But all of this, you can tell it's just generations of how it's evolved. The whole sawmill is connected to that central system. So as we move in from the yard into the main sawmill, it really all starts here on this huge bandsaw type sawmill. And as far as the details of it, I have no idea, but it's a huge machine and all fairly automated. Now this machine runs in long kind of shifts because it's just the most economical way of running it. It costs a considerable amount just to start the thing up. So this is where it all starts, and then there's slightly smaller saws throughout the sawmill that will break it down further. Now, I've no idea how old these exact machines are, but the sawmill has just been evolving over 150 years or so, starting with kind of steam powered machines, and you see that huge crane outside. And the whole thing started back with the coffin industry, I believe, using elm boards mainly. So that was kind of the basis, and now of course it's grown into a much bigger enterprise where they'll be dealing with all sorts of woods to supply both the workshop and the timber framing type things. Plus they still continue with the kind of coffin side of production, and you can see the much more modern machines here, which are taking rough sawn boards through, planing all four sides and putting that bull nose on the front to create these oak window boards. And then a huge part of the timber shop is actually the turning blanks for wood turning and bowl making, and you can see here they're turning them, they're cutting them on the bandsaw down on those blanks to the set sizes, and then that selection is then displayed in the shop for sale.
If you've got any logs of timber, as I said out there, you really need to cut it. If it's a big log, it's just going to do absolutely nothing except for rot. Certain timbers like sycamore, holly's another one. If it's not cut quickly, and holly's a lovely example where if you catch it right, it's almost pure white like ivory. If you leave it in the log without cutting it, it goes a horrible grey mottled sort of colour. It's very important that when you've got some planking, that you let the air always get to it. Some people think you should sort of stick it in a sealed sort of container, but don't do that, whatever happens. We call these wraps of timber, strips basically, and it's very important when you strip it to always get them in line. If you put them randomly, that when you go to use the boards, it'd be like a wave where they've sort of gone up and down and all over the place. So it's absolutely important that you get them sort of dead in line.
So we move away from the slabs outside back into the sawmill and look at some of the more specialist machinery. Like I said, this is all built up around the coffin industry, so there's actually specialist tools for that. And this cutting head here on the kind of radial arm saw cuts slots into the side boards, and then as you'll see, it'll then allow it to flex, so you get that shape, which is similarly to how you would do it on furniture or perhaps a curved wall doing some skirting board. But you get the idea that the whole head cuts through all at the same time, and then that will allow it to bend. As well as the large thicknesses and planers, then there's this huge drum sander here which will really finish them down, and all the different grits that go in there. A hugely automated machine. Here's the crane which used to be in operation, I guess was the main centre point for the whole sawmill. But as we head back across the yard, we're going to go over to the timber shop, and Dan is going to take over from here.
When we were seeing the tree being cut up earlier, it used to be a case that they would slice the bits off the end, they'd all get bundled up and they'd be put outside there, and we'd sell them at £50 a stack as a firewood bundle. We still sell firewood bundles, but we've started saying to them, look, there's an awful lot of good wood going out there that you're selling off quite cheap. So we add it now. This is all green oak. That some of it, obviously the greyer bits have been out here a little bit longer, but this tends to be cheaper because it is green timber, so it's going to have a higher moisture content than all of the kiln dried elements. But if you're working on things like an outdoor bench, or if you're wanting just a new fence post or something like that, this is much more suitable for that kind of a job. Or even if you just want to buy it cheap and dry it yourself, and you've got, want to work with it in a couple of years' time, there's that element as well. We'll get people walking, come straight up the counter and say, I want 6 lengths of 6 inch by 1 inch by this length. And you have to say to them, that's great, here's a tape measure, there's the self-selection area. We don't do, or we're only just starting to do, standardised sizes. And the reason being is that we could waste a huge amount of timber making them standardised, but then people would come in and they'd want the bit that we'd just cut and all the rest of it. We prefer to leave them as natural as possible, the way they're cut as possible, because that's one of the things that makes us unique. A lot of people actually enjoy coming here and spending an hour looking through the piles, because it's almost like a treasure hunt. They're finding that piece that they think that no one else has seen before, it's ideal for them. Actually this one matches that one, you can see it's from the same tree.
So that's the tour over. I'm just having a look around now. I've got to pick up a few bits for a couple of projects we've got planned, but only a woodworker knows that feeling you get when you're in a place like this. You know what I mean.
I stayed strong and well behaved in the tool shop, but the wish list is ever growing in my mind, ready for the workshop. So I'm sure we will be back at some point.
So that's me done here. Thank you to Yandles team for giving us a look around the sawmill. Bit of an eye-opener seeing saws that big. That bandsaw, for example, that huge one they were doing the big sawing on, is the same distance underground as well, because it goes right down. So pretty cool stuff. I've also picked up a little bit of timber, so we'll get started on that woodworking project. It's going to be some new doors for the cabinet build in the kitchen. But we'll hopefully be down here not too long from now for some more oak beams. Got another couple of projects lined up for that, for the timber framing. So any questions, stick them down below. I'll put a link to Yandles' website and social media down there as well. But thanks for watching. Remember, if you can, do it yourself, and we'll see you next time.